All right, today on Musician's Edition, we are going to look at number 48 from the Mallet section of Essential Elements. So that piece is titled High School Cadet March, okay? So in this piece, of course, we want to look at our key signature. We see that it's the same key signature we've been using for quite a while in this book, right? B is flat and E is flat, right? And we have several of those coming up in this piece. So we want to make sure that we take note of that, right? We also notice that we do quite a bit of skipping around in this piece, right? Jumping from one note to a note that is two notes above, right? Or what we call a skip, right? We skip one note, go to the next note above that one, right? You can see we have that in the first full measure, right? Remember when we have a piece that starts with what we call pickup notes, right? Or notes that aren't part of the first full measure, we call the first full measure measure 1, right? So measure 1 is actually where we see D, right? So the B flat and the C at the beginning are pickup notes, right? So then in measure 1 we have that skip, right? Beat 1 is D, beat 2 is F, right? So we jump from D, skip E flat, and go to F, right? And that's what we call a skip, right? We have a bunch of those in this piece. If you kind of glance through, you see there's a couple in measure 3 going from D to F again, right? And then we have a big one, what we might call a leap later on, where we jump all the way from G down to B flat. So that's definitely going to be something that we want to practice, right? The measure after that, we have another skip that goes from B flat to D, right? And then in the next to last measure, we skip from E flat down to C. Okay, so what we need to get used to is finding those spots where the notes skip or leap, and being able to find that distance with our eyes and then translate that over to what we're doing with our hands. So first we need to isolate a couple of these spots. And as we do that, we're going to want to think through the sticking that we want to use, right? Remember, one of our main guides for deciding which sticking to use is that we want our right hand to play the highest note of a passage and our left hand to play the lowest note of a passage. That way we don't have one hand needing to cross over or push past another hand if we can help it. There are going to be some times when you have to do that, but we want to try as best we can to plan out our sticking to where we don't have to, okay? So let's start kind of towards the end here, and we'll work our way backwards and see if we can pick the best stickings that are going to work for this piece and give us the best chances of success. Make sure you always have a pencil, right? Because we're going to want to write these in, because we only want to make these choices once, right? We want to think about it, choose a sticking, write it in, and then play it that way every time, and not have to rethink through that process every time we get this piece back out, right? We want to just make that decision, decide on the best one, pencil it in, right? The reason we use pencil instead of pen is because we might change our mind down the road and decide that something different works a little bit better. So we want to be able to erase it, write in a different one, okay? So let's start with the last full measure of the piece, right? It starts on G, right? So we have 8 notes that go G, F, E flat, C, B flat, okay? And then if we just count from the beginning, starting with that first full measure, that's going to put us on measure 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Measure 7, right? The last little string of 8 notes, all right? So we have G, F, E flat, skip to C, B flat, okay? So the highest note in that passage, and even if we glance a little bit ahead, the highest note in this kind of cluster of notes here is that G on beat 1. So following our sticking guidelines of having our right hand play the highest note, we want to start with our right hand on that G, okay? So then we get right, left, right, left, right. And so our right hand ends on that B flat, okay? So let's go ahead and try that measure a couple times. G, F, E flat, C, B flat. Okay? And you just want to practice that a couple times until it feels really comfortable and you get used to seeing that skip on the page, translating that skip from E flat to C with your hands. Okay? And when you're practicing passages like this, try to resist the urge to just memorize it and then not look at the music anymore, right? Because part of what we got to train ourselves to do is to see the notes on the page and then to feel where those are, right? So as we're getting reps in, you want to make sure that you're looking at the notes as they go by, right? Every single time. All right, let's play that measure one more time, starting on G. And okay. Now if we back our way up, we know that we want to use our right hand on G. So then let's work our way backwards. Ideally, our left hand would play the B flat in measure 6, but that may not put us in a great position in the next measure, right? Where we want our right hand to be the highest note, right? So if we look at B flat, D, E flat, F, G, right? It turns our sticking around if we start with our left hand. So let's see what it would feel like if we started that measure with our right hand on the B flat in measure 6, and that would then let us land on our right hand in measure 7. So B flat, D, E, F, G. And that feels pretty good to me, right? So let's try that a couple times and see if it works well, okay? So B flat starting with the right hand. Okay? That feels fairly comfortable, so let's practice getting there a couple times. B flat, D, E flat, F, G. Okay, that feels pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and pencil in that right hand at the beginning of measure 6. Okay, so then if we put 6 and 7 together, starting on the right hand, we're gonna alternate all the way to the end, right? So let's try that passage. Let's play from measure 6, play through measure 7, right? Right hand goes on 1 in both of those measures and then end on B flat. Ready, and... Okay, and you just want to play that passage as many times as you need to get really, really comfortable with it before we keep working our way backwards, right? And again, remember, we want to watch the notes go by while we're working on it. Okay, once you feel really good about it, let's figure out how we're going to get ourselves into measure 7, right? So this is where we have one of those big leaps in the piece. We go from G down to B flat, right? And the main thing that's going to need to happen is beat 2 of measure 5 is going to need to be a right hand, right? When we jump down to B flat, the first of those 2 eighth notes is going to have to be right hand, so that measure 6 starts on the right hand like we just planned out, right? At this point, it doesn't really matter so much which hand we play the quarter note G with, as long as we get our right hand down to that B flat, okay? So for right now, we'll just play G with our right hand, and then B flat, B flat, B flat again to start measure 6, okay? All right, and that's a pretty big leap, so we want to practice that a few times, just making sure that we can be really accurate getting from G to B flat. Right, as many repetitions as it takes to get to that point, okay? And then, once you feel good about it, we'll try going from there all the way to the end, okay? And ready, go. Okay, and again, you can get some repetitions at that, all right? So, now that we have that chunk worked out, let's work our way now from the beginning and see how we can get to that right hand in measure 5. You could keep working your way backwards, right? But at a certain point, you kind of have to decide which direction I'm going to go at it from, whether it's from the end and work back, whether it's from the beginning, work forward, right? At this point, I think it'd probably be better off if we just now back up to the beginning and then work it out and make it line up with the sticking we already have written in, starting from the beginning now, okay? So right away, we see the lowest note in our first little passage here is B flat, right? And then our highest note in that passage is F. So we're going to start the B flat on our left hand at the very beginning and play B flat, C, D, and that'll set up our right hand to be able to move to F while our left hand is playing D, right? So we're going to play that as left, right, left, right, left, right, okay? And then we want to start that whole thing over again with the left hand. Okay, so left on the very first note of the piece, left, right, left, right, left, right. So I'm going to put a right, an R, over the top of that, the eighth note F in the first full measure. So we have left, right, left, right, left, right. And then we're going to jump back down to B flat with our left hand, just like we do at the very beginning of the piece, right? And you'll see how this lines up at this moment on beat 2 of measure 2 to give us left, right, left. And then we're in a really good spot in measure 3 to start on our left hand, because we alternate D to F, D, back to F, right? And when we do that, we want to play it left, right, following our rules of left hand plays the lowest note, right hand plays the highest note, okay? So hopefully you can see how kind of we made those decisions there, right? Let's see if we can play all of measure 3, right, by itself. So D, F, D, F, and then we'll figure out what to do in measure 4. But left, right in measure 3. Okay, that's going to land us on our left hand for beat 1 of measure 4 on the E flat. So then we're going to want to switch to our right hand for the E flat on beat 2 of measure 4. And the reason for that is we want to end with that G on our right hand, so our left hand doesn't have to cross over our right hand to get to G, okay? Hopefully that's making sense. So let's start on measure 3. So we have D, F, left hand on E flat, switch to the right hand on E flat and play E flat, F, G. And then we're at the point that we left off earlier, okay? So here's measure 3. Ready, and go, and... Okay, and then at that point I'm set up to continue on to what we have already planned out here, okay? So that worked out really nicely, that we were able to kind of meet in the middle with the stickings that we chose to use on the second half of the piece. They just kind of, they landed really nicely with the stickings we need to use for the first half. It's not always that way. Sometimes if you work from back to front and then front to back, you'll find a point in the middle where they don't quite agree, and you just have to pick pick one that's going to be best to make the two work with each other. We kind of got lucky here and it worked out really well. Okay, so now we're ready to kind of play the whole piece, right? But now that we're playing larger chunks of music, like we talked about, we want to slow down our tempo a little bit so we have some time to think about each section that's coming up now that we've kind of worked on them individually. Okay, so let's start at the beginning, but we'll go nice and slow. Remember those stickings. We're starting with the left hand here. And ready, and go. All right, so hopefully you can see how we made all those decisions. There's not one right answer to this. Generally, things work out better if we can keep our left hand on the lowest note, right hand on the highest note. It doesn't always work out that way, and you don't necessarily have to do it that way. It usually just works a little bit better for moving our mallets around the keyboard, and kind of lays a little bit better if we can make it work that way. But it's really important to choose stickings, write those stickings in, and use those stickings, right? And try to pick the best possible option that's going to make the most sense, okay? Let's play this piece one more time today, all the way from the beginning. And ready, and go, and... All right, very good. So enjoy that. Try to choose your stickings really, really carefully again, and stick to those. And have fun practicing it. And I will see you next time.